Hello, I'm Buddy Lindsay of Lindsay Acres Farms. Welcome back to the channel and the continuation of the series of building a homestead from scratch. We finally own the land. I'd be honest in saying that the biggest experience of actually trying to buy this land has been an exercise in hurry up and wait. About 5 months ago, we started the process of basically asking if we could buy some of the land out here. Since we just recently went through the process of purchasing the land, let's talk about what happened, what was our process, and what are the things that we did, because if you're like me and you went into this, you're like, I don't know what's going on. Again, we had no idea what we're doing. First thing we did is just, hey, Grandma, can we buy some of the land from you? We waited a little bit of time and came back, and we decided yes, she would let us buy some. We negotiated the amount and then how much that we wanted to buy, and then from there it was time to try to figure out how to actually do it, because we're carving out of a bigger section that presented its own challenges. Well, what do you do now? Interestingly, along this section here, I have a section line. So the United States in our area is divided into like 1 mile by 1 mile section lines, and you had to figure out based on this section and based on this section, you have to get the plat or the survey area. Getting a survey is really where kind of the most waiting had to happen. We could have tried to figure out how to carve out the 20 on our own, but really to make sure we got it done right, we had to get a surveyor. And it took a long time to get through, and finally I was able to get through to one, and I think he lost my information for a while because it took over a month and a half before we actually got out here and did anything. And that was actually a fun process once getting out here. So really, just to recap at this point, a few things happened. We asked permission, we figured out what we wanted to get, we negotiated a price, and then now we're ready to actually get the brass tacks of figuring out what 20 acres that we want, and then how to get it sectioned off, and then move on to the actual purchase price. Along the way, this happened. It was still my grandmother's land, and so she can do whatever it is she wants, but she allowed an easement for a pipeline to come through here for a natural gas pipeline. So we walked a lot. We walked to all four corners of the property of where the 20 acres were going to be. We started up at the corner of the section line where you have one this way and then one this way. And we walked about almost 1,000 feet back to the south, and we dropped a pin. Then we came back and we went that way, went to the west, and we dropped another pin, and I'll show you that here in a second. Then we met the two. It was actually really interesting because he basically took a stick and basically was like, held it on here, had higher power GPS tracking on it and a little monitor, and was basically just walking, and then when he hit the correct spot, he kind of poked it into the ground and let the thing do the recalculation. Yeah, he's exactly where he wanted. Drug a thing on the on his screen to get that square, that rectangular 20 acres, and once he confirmed that that would be the right spot, he took out the pole and then put a rebar pin into the ground. It's longer than that, with a cap on it showing that's the exact corner. And he started off where two section lines meet, that he triangulated for multiple other corner section lines to make sure it all hit in the exact spot. And so that's how he was able to get a perfect starting point up at the section line corner up here, and then kind of do the rectangle out properly. So one of the interesting things about doing surveys is you kind of figure out where property lines are and where things are. Well, sometimes you have that neighbor that starts arguing with you, well, your fence is on my property. Well, that's what the previous neighbor of this land was like. He was like, you know, your fence is 12 inches on my property, da 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 da. Well, turns out his fence is about 3 feet onto my property, but there's an extenuating circumstance on why we're not even going to bother with this. The county has a 1 rod easement on all section lines, 16.5 feet on one side and 16.5 feet on the other side. So the county can come up here over to my little property line there and say 16.5 feet that way is now mine. It's now the county's to do with whatever they want. We're building a road, and so at that point, who cares, because somebody could just come in and take it over all they want to do. The other side is that who cares? Like, going to be a good neighbor. They're not using this property. I can't use this part of my property over there, even if I had the other foot over there. So it kind of doesn't even matter at the end of the day. I'd rather be good neighborly. And if they wanted to go through the effort of hiring lawyers and claiming, you know, that they've used the property for so long and they can take over that, like, that's a lot of work and a lot of money to get that resurveyed, pay the lawyers, get it all taken care of, just to get a sliver of property. Doesn't matter, especially since somebody can come along and pull it. But that is a thing to be aware of if you're buying property and somebody is encroaching on your side of the property. Here they have 15 years. After 15 years of encroachment, they can then file paperwork, file a lawsuit and say, hey, we have been using this property for 15 years. There has been no, like, they have not tried to reclaim it or whatever, and then they can just kind of take that sliver. Now they got to go through a lot of effort to make that happen, but it is a possibility. I'm gonna worry about that side of the road. So we got the survey done. We paid our $1,800 to the surveyor. They gave us our paper with our plat, and we were ready to move on to the next step. This is where things got super shaky for me on like what to do. Fortunately, my grandmother has had a lawyer for a really long time that deals with these things, and so she just like, I will take the plat and I will go give it to him, and took it to the lawyer, and the lawyer just drew up all the paperwork that we needed to do. We needed to do 2 affidavits, one basically saying that we are both agreeing to this purchase. So we took those 2 affidavits, we went down and got them notarized, took it over to the county office, and we handed them the papers, showed everything was signed, showed everything was notarized. My grandmother and I, we both paid a fee for filing or what, I didn't actually understand, and her fee was more for some reason. It was the signing of the affidavit and then notarizing it. Handed that to them. They handed us a confirmation letter that the intent of what was going to happen. We signed that, handed it back, paid a check, and waited for about 15 minutes for them to do paperwork, and then the land was ours officially. And it was funny because like, I don't know what a deed to the land is. Like, I've never messed with this, and they handed me back the affidavit signed, the affidavit signed, and I was like, so when do we get the deed? And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, when do we get a deed? And she's like, that is your deed. And I was like, okay. Well, that's interesting. Bullet point recap. About 5 months ago, we decided, hey, let's go ahead and buy the land. We talked to my grandma. She said yes. We discussed size. We figured out the size. We then negotiated price. We got that determined. Then we needed to figure out where. We hired a consultant to come out and make sure we could carve out in the right spot. Look at the last 2 videos for that. We then came back and got a survey of the exact spot. Ironically, the consultant carved out, he's like, I think you want this section. He almost perfectly nailed the section that we ended up getting. Anyway, we got the survey done. Anyway, we got that. We took the plat that we got from the survey, and we handed it to the lawyer. The lawyer then drew up 2 affidavits. We met my grandmother at the county office, or at a lawyer, to get it notarized. We then walked over to the county, submitted the information, did the paperwork, waited. Then we went over to the planning area, and they did the stuff to give us a address, and then we can take that to the post office spot, or to the post office, and then we can start getting mail here. That is the process that we went through. I feel like that's the more basic process because we paid cash. Fill in for title searches, fill in for mortgages, fill in for probably a realtor to help you find stuff, help you find land, and right in the middle of all that, and that's probably where you're gonna land. So what's next? Well, part of that is to save money. We want to do this as debt-free as possible, so we spent a large chunk of money that we had to purchase this place, and so we need to do a little bit of saving. We're also going to deplete probably most of the rest of that chunk with our next purchase, and I'm going to look at buying an excavator and fixing my tractor. If the tractor can't be fixed, we're probably gonna have to go buy another tractor, and that there's just going to be some figuring out of what to do in both of those cases, but that'll take most of the rest of our savings. And then so from there, it's just going to be a lot of manual labor and working to save up money for the next steps, and we will just pay as you go for a while. You probably noticed I just brushed over the excavator. Doing a lot of research and looking at the land and doing a lot of figuring out a lot of things that I can do myself, getting a mini X makes a lot of sense. And so we're going to chunk down some money and buy a used excavator. Not the most expensive, not brand new, and this is where it's going to be an interesting experience figuring out what excavator to buy. So that's going to be fun, and then I'm probably going to have to do some fixing on it, so stay tuned on the channel for that. The next step after we do that is we're just going to do a lot of clearing. And trying to shape things around here and figure that out. After that, in parallel, we're going to actually meet with a company in a few weeks called You Build It, where they act as a consulting company to help you build your own house and let you be the general contractor of yourself. Because I can do a lot of house building on my own, I just can't build the shell. And so if I can be my own general contractor and hire a consultant, I can save a lot of money and I can break stuff up how I need it. But I'll get more into that process in another video, but those are the next things coming up. We are finally owning the land. We can finally start doing things. Videos are going to be a trickle for a little bit for this as we prep next steps and do next things, but at some point we're going to be able to actually get out here and start doing work and figuring things out, and more of these specific videos will be able to come up more. So stay tuned, like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Have a great one.